and we're talking about lesson planning. So here we go. Just a very short one today because I'm sure you've all had some experience with lesson planning before. And if you haven't, it isn't that hard. It takes a long time to practice, but the theory is pretty easy. Here it is right in front of you. Great lessons. Okay, so what makes a great lesson? You notice that it's circular. It starts at one point and it comes back to seems to be the same point. So where do you think it starts? Well, let's take a look. It starts at the beginning where you're saying to your students, okay, I have an outcome or I have an objective, and I want to do a lesson on a certain set of skills or a certain theory or a certain concept that leads to an outcome, or I want to do a lesson on a certain objective. So I turn it into a performance objective and I want to teach a lesson on it. Regardless, you have to start with where your students are. So pre-assessment is very important, and there's lots of ways to do that. You can do some research on that yourself. You can ask students. You can do diagnostic tests. You can have them actually do some of the work that you want them to produce by the end of the lesson and see how they do. Maybe some of them have already got it. So then you have to differentiate your class, which is another educational jargon for you, is basically, teach the people who need to be taught what they need to be taught, and so on. So let's go on from there. Pre-assess. All right. Once you've pre-assessed, you may subdivide your class into groups. You may have those who already have it become part-time teachers, and they may teach smaller pods of people. There's all sorts of ways to organize that. But at any rate, you have to do some teaching and some demonstration of the skills or the theory or whatever it is that you're trying to teach. So you want to get something across to those students. There's a transmission aspect to it. Okay, then the students practice what it is that you've taught them. So if you're trying to teach students how to poach an egg, you demonstrate poaching an egg. You talk about all the different things you're doing, kind of like a Gordon Ramsay does on his little cooking show. Then you let them practice. Okay, so they say that perfect practice makes perfect. You have to make sure that as they're practicing, you're assessing them. Assessing for learning. Now, this is something that you have to make sure is done in a very constructive way. Because let's face it, many of us don't like to be assessed. We don't like to be evaluated. We get uptight. We freeze up. And we sometimes mess up what otherwise we would be able to do if we weren't being assessed. Ever been in that situation before? I know I have, lots of times, where I can do something quite easily, and then, okay, I'm going to assess you on it, and all of a sudden, all of that knowledge and skill just seems to go right out the window, and I'm like a bumbling idiot. Anyway, so you want to try to create that culture of looking forward to assessment, seeing it as a necessary part of learning, and not something to be frightened of, not something to be avoided. In other words, it's essential for learning. It's the middle part of learning, teaching, assessing, and learning. So once we've done that, we do more practicing. We refine our practice. We get better at it. It's kind of like a spiral. We spiral up towards competency, towards mastery of things. Okay, and then towards the end. Now, this all depends on what sort of course you're teaching. You may be teaching an informal course where there's really no assessment of learning in the sense of, a formal grade. Although all people who learn things, I think, want to know how they did ultimately. So there should be probably in all good lessons some sort of a point where you say, okay, you've got it, or okay, you haven't got it. Or maybe you should work on this or that or something else. Come back next class and we'll see how you're doing. So there has to be an assessment of learning as well. There you have it. A good lesson, a circle goes around. Now, principles. Here's some reminders that a very good YouTube that I would suggest to you. It's on the website. And this is the gist of what this person talks to you about. Oops, sorry, pushed the wrong button. Now I hope you can see that because it seems quite light on my slide. I'll play this back before I show it, obviously, and make sure. Show, don't tell. In other words, don't yak on, for hours about something. Show people how to do it. Demonstrate. Practice. Allow practice. Motivation comes from accomplishment. Now, that's an interesting statement. And when you see the video, he goes on a bit longer about that. Real motivation comes from people realizing that they can accomplish something. Then they want to do it. Because if you go back to the natural state of the learner, and if you assume that this to be true, we all want to accomplish things. We're motivated by accomplishing, by learning, by getting better at things. And we do the things that we're generally good at. So, motivation comes from that, not from, setting off fireworks before your class or having all kinds of whiz-bang gadgets, although those can augment lessons. But true motivation comes from students really feeling that they can accomplish things. And it also relates to real world mastery, not artificial things. So I think we've kind of gone past that. People want to see the point of what they're learning. Outcomes or objectives should be specific, tangible, and attainable. The last principle to keep in mind for lesson planning. Okay, those are things you can review on those YouTube videos that I have suggested for this week's reading and viewing. Now, this is something that I think is important when you're teaching and building lessons. There's two things that will really fix a lesson into a person's mind. And I suggest that you watch those two videos that I stuck in there on what makes learning stick. One, it pertains to advertising a bit, but I think there's definitely a lesson there for lesson planning, if you will. That's emotion and meaning. Tie what you're doing into a student's emotions. Tell stories. Let it have an emotional context. If the student's emotions are engaged, that learning will be seared onto his or her brain. I'm sure you have had a learning experience in your life that was attached to either a positive or a negative emotion, and you've never forgotten it. So I think we can say that quite clearly. The other thing is meaning. Students remember things that are meaningful to them. Now, that's a real surprise, isn't it? Come on. Relevance, significance, importance. That's the two subsections of meaning. Is it relevant to me? Is it significant? Is it important? Now, students can put up with a lot of bad teaching if the topic is relevant or significant to them. And conversely, they can put up with a lack of meaning, a lack of relevance or significance if their emotions are engaged, if they desire that learning, if they have some sort of emotional need for that learning. The other aspect of emotion, of course, is fear. Now, that's what we want to get rid of in teaching. So you have to pay attention in your lesson plans to really making a safe environment for those students so that they can take chances, they can mess stuff up, they can practice and not get it, and eventually start to get it and have that motivation that comes from, geez, I didn't think I could do this, but now I realize I can. That's what you want to get those students to feel, those aha moments, as they say.